Could America have a general strike like France? This is a video from A More Perfect Union. Oh shit.
Hi, my name's Alice, I'm a French YouTuber, and a couple of months ago I started posting about the French protest on social media. As the protest continued, I made a video about it on my YouTube channel, and that's...
Hey yo, if there's one people who know, if there's a group of people who know how to get into the fucking streets and fucking protest and riot, bro, I'm gonna tell you right now, it's the goddamn French. It's the French. They always outside, bro. They always outside doing this shit. You know what I'm saying? Hey, and man, and more power to y'all. More power to y'all for exercising whatever rights they gave y'all. For real, 100%.
That's when I noticed a common theme in my comment section. Some people said the French will protest for anything, or why can't something like this happen in America? Now, I couldn't help but feel the powerlessness in those comments. And the same sentiments were reflected in American media coverage.
You can be proud that your people have the sense to protest this, at least. Americans are so beat down, misinformed, and indifferent that they would never respond in this way to this mode of oppression. We are hopeless. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, misinformed, definitely. But you know, we have a government that actively tries to keep us stupid. You know, we have a government that actively tries to keep us in the dark for the sake of you know, getting away with the things they get away with. You understand? Like, going through the lengths and the efforts that they go to make sure that you think one thing is happening, but the reality is quite the opposite. You know what I'm saying? So in this situation, I totally understand. I totally understand how people feel this way. And honestly, you know, I think it's not the American people don't respond to oppression. It's just that, you know, we're just so divided that the moment one group of people starts to fuss about one thing, the other side tries to figure out a way to make it a non-issue. And I think the best example we got of this was Black Lives Matter, right? Starting as a formal movement against, you know, police brutality against minorities and shit. And then now you have Blue Lives Matter all of a sudden trying to talk about how many cops sacrificed their lives on the line and this and that. We got to worry about them too. And it's just like, yeah, but you're missing the underlying point there, which is that, you know, black and brown folk get mistreated by the cops much more often than everybody else. It's fucking like the stats are there, you know? So it was one of those things where yeah, people might argue about it, but it quickly turns into finger pointing because it's like, because we're divided. We're divided as a nation, and you could blame our government for that.
The accepted narrative seemed to be that the types of protests taking place in France could never happen in America because French people and French culture were just different.
The French love to protest.
The culture of protest runs deep.
Striking and protesting was the French national pastime.
French retirees are outraged that the retirement age is going to go up from just 62 years old to 64.
They really do love their strikes.
The fact of the matter is Americans don't like the fact that they're retiring later, but they're not, at this particular point, going out in the streets and causing a lot of trouble.
This really bothered me. Why do we see protesting, striking, unionizing as something essentially cultural? Whose interest does it serve to promote this narrative? And finally, like my commenters said, could something like this,
more than 1 million striking against the president's proposed pension reform,
happen in America? We're going to get to the bottom of those questions right now. This is the Classroom from More Perfect Union, and today we're talking about Europe. Now, before we get to the nitty-gritty of it, I'd like to go and see why some fellow French citizens decided to show up to the protest today.
Non, non, non à ta réforme bidon.
Parce qu'on est contre la réforme
Because we're against unfair reform of Macron,
et qu'on ne veut pas que ça
and
passe.
we don't refuse to let it pass.
Il fait du déni de démocratie.
It's a denial of
Il est en
democracy.
train de mettre une pagaille en France.
It's putting the
comme
country in
si
an
ça
unbearable
permis
situation
à l'arrêt.
because everything is on pause.
Le mouvement des manifestations contre
I've been
la
following the
réforme
protests since the beginning.
Et j'avais vraiment envie de venir à celle-ci.
I wanted to come to this one in particular because the law was passed, not voted, but passed.
Pas voté, mais pas
Sont profondément opposés à cette réforme. Parce que d'autres solutions existent et je
He's
pense
opposed,
que
as
s'ils
there's other
faisaient l'effort
solutions.
d'écouter et les syndicalistes
If you
et les
listen to trade unions,
parlementaires,
the members of parliament, things would be
de
different.
droit quand même.
il faut
C'est là
qu'il
où
reste
ça...
du droit, nous on est les garants.
C'est là, voilà, on parle de dialogue, mais si les travailleurs n'ont plus de droits, c'est compliqué d'avoir un dialogue. Donc, voilà.
Talk about workers' rights, but you gotta have fair dialogue. Yep, we all have a role to play.
Essayer de faire avancer les droits pour tout le monde.
Ensure better rights. Yeah. I mean, simple shit. It's crazy. It's crazy how often we find ourselves you know, like fighting for just the simplest of fucking rights. And I think that, like, in part, it is a sad reality that it's like, you know, your government's not going to listen to you, that the government is supposed to be acting in the best interest of the people, yet they do shit that is obviously not in the best interest of people. That's rather in the best interest of the government itself, you know, and that selfishness is what turns people against their governments. Because at the end of the day, it's like, bro, hold on, wait a second. I thought you were here to represent me. I thought you were here to get shit passed and do legislation that would better my life, but instead you're making things worse.
Okay, back to the studio. So the first thing I did was to take a little bit of distance and look at where we come from. To make things simple, we can divide the last century in 3 eras. First, the era of decline of Union prosperity after the Second World War that progressed into the 1980s into an era of rapid de-unionization in exchange for increasing management power. And finally, a third, potentially new era that we'll talk about later in the video. And to make things even simpler, we're going to create 2 tracks that will materialize Europe on the one hand and America on the other hand. That way we'll be able to check the progress made on each side as we move forward. But first, let's start with the beginning. We're in the late 1890s and unemployment is really high in the US. Between 3,000 to 4,000 unemployed workers gather in Union Square in New York to listen to one woman called Emma Goldman, an anarchist and a ferocious workers' rights advocate. Goldman told them the following, quote, "Demonstrate before the palaces of the rich. Demand work. If they do not give you work, demand bread. If they deny you both, take bread."
And you know what? And that shit is still very true to this fucking day. By the way, don't get that shit twisted, bro. If at the end of the day, they don't give you the freedom to be yourself, right? And then afterwards, they don't give you the fucking ability to live as they ask you to, then forget that shit. Everything's off the fucking table. Take what you have to take. And we see this happen so many times in America. All right, look at fucking places like Flint, Michigan, that still got dirty ass water. That's fucking ridiculous, bro. That's fucking ridiculous. And the worst part about it is that the same plants that are causing the issues with the water being dirty will then drop off fucking cases of water, acting like they're the goddamn heroes of the day. And it's just bullshit. It's bullshit. It's look at my left hand while I slap you with my right.
20 years before that, you could hear similar speeches in France as the Paris Commune sought to establish itself against the bourgeois republic. Revolution was in the air both in Europe and in the US. In 1935, the National Labor Relations Act was signed into law by President Franklin D. Roosevelt to quell industrial unrest and introduce collective bargaining between trade unions and employers.
And it was a great thing. Unions are a great thing. Now, the only part I don't like about unions nowadays is that you have a lot of unions, like the teachers union and shit like that is actually owned and operated by like bigger fucking conglomerates and massive corporations who, by the way, their best interest is to keeping you poor, because the poorer you are, the more you're willing to fucking bend over backwards for a fucking $1 or $2. And if you're willing to bend over backwards for $1 or $2, then there's a lot of things that we could do, first of all, without even having to ask you to do it, because you're going to want to keep that job at the end of the day, aren't you? Like, in the end of the day, you want to put food on the table, right? So, you know what I'm saying? Eat shit and die, as CEOs would say.
That's a serious step forward for America. Now, a year later, the left-wing coalition called Le Front Populaire, the Popular Front, won the French elections with a pro-workers' rights agenda. They established a 40 hours work week and forced employers to raise wages and to give employees 2 weeks of paid holidays. 10 years later, the right to strike was even put in the French constitution. Europe catches up. At that time, it felt like a dialogue between employers and employees could exist, because things were done to reduce the inequality of bargaining power between the two groups.
Yeah, because think about it like this, and we do this a lot here in America, where we're giving the corporations a lot more power, right? We're allowing them to just fire and rehire people without a problem, without even having to like come to the table and have a conversation with individuals. You get what I'm saying? Like we're so much more, like, honestly, like look at the school system, okay? Here in America, it's gotten to the point, and this is a lot during the fucking Bush Jr. era, where this motherfucker signed into law all these fucking waivers all these waivers that would essentially allow you to put your kid in a private school and not have to pay for that shit. Why? Because the government was paying for it. So that means you can go to public school that everyone is paying into, right? Do their fucking taxes day in, day out. All right. You can go do that. But of course, you're going to have all the issues that come with public school. Like, I don't know, like fucking fights and I don't know what else you want to throw out there. A wider range of minority students, you know what I'm saying? Kids from troubled homes, all this shit. People who can't afford to pay extra to put their kids in a fancier school. So yeah, you get all that bullshit. You get all that bullshit going on in the public school system. And so then what did they do? Oh, well, here, so don't worry about it. Even though the American taxpayers are already paying for this system, you know what we'll do? We'll give you fucking waivers. We'll give you waivers so that way you can put your kid in a private school. And now here's the problem with private schools. Teachers in private schools are not union. They are not union. Okay? The private school has absolute power to go ahead and hire and fire teachers as they fucking please. Right? So the thing is, it's not, you know, so first of all, the regular teachers unions are already fucking possessed by the goddamn megacorps, right? But then on the other hand, the government's also trying to fucking help out these private schools and giving them money, therefore taking away. By the way, how do public schools make money? You want to take a guess? Attendance. For every kid that shows up on a daily fucking basis, that number gets saved and stored, and your budget for your next year depends on how much attendance you had the year before on a daily fucking basis. So it's bullshit. It's bullshit that you're first of all using our taxpayers' money to take kids and put them into private schools, but then on top of that, you're only giving schools as much money as kids who show through the fucking door. Like you're literally creating the situation where you don't want fucking public education anymore. And public education's a goddamn right. You can't be taking that shit away. That's just ridiculous.
But that didn't last long. As globalization and deindustrialization accelerated, union prosperity declined. In 2 decades, the US Parliament and several states established laws meant to make striking increasingly illegal. In response to major post-war strikes, Republicans and Democrats passed the Taft-Hartley Act, also called the Labor Management Relations Act, in 1947. The act restricted the activities and power of labor unions by first making secondary strikes illegal. It meant that union workers could no longer support a strike initiated by workers in another corporation. Strikes could only be organized against the contractual employers. Now, these restrictions also exist in some European countries like Latvia, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, and the UK.
Wow. And it's crazy that it's just those places. It's just those places.
And they can be applied in Germany, Italy, and Spain, depending on the nature of the strike. In France, on the other hand, secondary strikes are legal and solidarity action is common.
So in other words, it's the idea that like if you work, let's just say, you know, let's just say you're a writer for a TV show, right? And you know, we have the writer strike that goes on. I mean, honestly, bro, it seems like it's fucking cyclical. It seems like it's like every couple of years they have to go out in the streets and sacrifice eating food for a few days just to get this fucking point across that they're not getting paid enough. So imagine that those writers are on strike, and then all of a sudden teachers are like, no, you know what? You know, we have students who are fucking writers right now, so we want to go on strike too. We want to go on strike, and we want to help fucking put a pause on the goddamn system until these individuals get what they need. And the fact that that isn't allowed means that when these strikes go on, it looks like the fucking writer strike, where it's just like a couple people within a fucking 20 square foot area going in a fucking circle, and there's maybe only like fucking 30 of them. But the reality is that everybody else watching this knows how fucked up it is. And the thing is that you can't participate, because if you're participating now in a strike that has nothing to do with your business, well, your business has the absolute right to go ahead and fire you. You didn't show up to work today. Oh, I was protesting the writing bullshit. Oh, well, that's not your problem. You're not a writer, are you? You're a metal worker. So get the fuck back to work or quit. You know what I'm saying? So it's bullshit. It's bullshit, because, you know, that also being able to have secondary strikes, being able to go on strike because some other group is also on strike because you might believe in their rights or whatever the case is. you know, not allowing that, I believe, creates even further divide. It creates the people who are at work looking at the people fucking striking and thinking to themselves, oh, well, you guys are just taking a fucking day off, huh? You lazy pieces of shit. You guys need to be doing more. You need to stop complaining and get your ass to work. But the reality is, bro, is that if you were in their shoes, you'd be upset too.
The Taft-Hartley Act also allowed individual states, later called right-to-work states, to outlaw the union shop and agency shop arrangements in companies. These arrangements forced newly hired employees to either join the company's union or at least pay union contributions, so getting rid of them helped decrease union membership. Finally, 20 years later, the controversial Public Employees Fair Employment Act of 1967, better known as the Taylor Law, prohibited New York State employees from striking. All these new obstacles forced America to put the brakes on union development. Before we look at what happened in Europe, did you notice how the meaning of words have changed there? First, we have a law titled Public Employees Fair Employment Act that made striking illegal and led to the incarceration of public workers. Then you have the right-to-work states outlawing compulsory union membership, therefore implying that unions prevent employees from working.
You imagine? Come on, bro. Unions don't prevent employees from working. They prevent employers from fucking the employees. You see the difference there?
And finally, remember that the Labor Relations Act of the 1930s was amended by the Labor Management Relations Act. Words matter, and those examples show that the culture around work changed in favor of management. It was the beginning of a new era, the era of management power.
Sad guy.
So what happened during that time in Europe? Well, Europe tried to resist the rise of free market capitalism. Eastern Europe was under the influence or part of the communist USSR, and Western Europe tended to reject US imperialism. For example, in May 1968, an unprecedented wave of protest as well as a general strike took over France, and was then followed by the Italian Autunno Caldo, meaning hot autumn, during which Italian workers went on a series of strikes to demand better working conditions. Those two moments of resistance marked the history of labor in Europe. The goal was to ensure that economic shocks weren't instrumentalized to encourage the privatization of the economy or increase employers' power.
You see right there, the privatization of the economy. Well, what does that essentially mean? That means the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. That means that, in other words, you know, fuck you having rights that defend, you know, your ability to work and your livelihood and your income. That's what that means. It means, you know what? We're going to give power to those who have the most money. We're going to give power to those who can buy their way through the system. Because at the end of the day, without these great companies and corporations, we wouldn't have any employment at all. Shut the fuck up.
Of employees.
We would.
Let me give you an example. As unemployment rose in France in the 1970s, unions advocated for a policy of work sharing, which meant that employees' working hours would be reduced to encourage employers to hire new workers. Their motto was very simple: work less, work all. Unsurprisingly, it is around that time that Americans started working more than Europeans. Before that, it was the opposite. Americans worked less than Europeans.
By the way, don't get it twisted. There used to be today you have a weekend, right? You have Saturday and Sunday to chill the fuck out. Back in the day, if I'm not mistaken, there was a point where we had you worked 4 days, you were off 3. And then eventually they're like, no, we need people to work. So they literally made it 6 days a week. So people were working 6 days a week and got to rest on Sunday. That's why, you know, Sunday was the Lord's day. You know what I'm saying? It was the day of rest. So that was the only day of rest Americans got. Well, I don't know if y'all know what happened there, but because of the fact that more people were now working, a lot more people had a lot more disposable income. And guess what? That money was being saved and bought in banks and bonds and you know, and under the mattress and shit like that. And you know what they ended up saying? They say, wait, we want all these Americans to spend all their money. We want our people to spend their money. So you know what? Let's give them an extra day. Let's give them an extra day off. So that way they can go ahead and throw their money back into the economy. And literally, that's why you have 2 days off. You have 2 days off because they opened it up so that you'd have an extra day to spend the money you were making. That's it. And that's it. And that's it, bro. So like when you wonder, like, what fuels, you know, American politics, what fuels American policy, what fuels legislation, what fuels fucking movements, and literally what is the gasoline in America's engine? It's money. Money. When they say money makes the world go round, they mean it.
So it's not so much about cultural differences, but rather about unions' resistance and achievements in times of economic shock. After the shock, those achievements were often secured and became the new norm. However, while most of Europe was resisting the influence of the US, one European leader chose to open the door to neoliberalism.
The Iron Lady of the Western world.
In 1979, Margaret Thatcher was elected as the UK Prime Minister.
Listen, I don't know too much about European history because in America they pretty much teach you like how they made the country and then what's been going on in the country since. I mean, it's a lot of things that went down. I get it. But I think every time I've heard of Margaret Thatcher, it's been in a good light. I don't think I've ever heard, anyone talk about the dark side of Margaret Thatcher,
In the US, the neoliberal ideology was already well established and culminated with the election of Ronald Reagan in 1980.
You wanted law and order in this town. You've got it.
Thatcher and Reagan were aggressively anti-union. They did not hide it. As soon as she was elected, Thatcher dismantled trade unions with a series of employment acts that made picketing increasingly illegal. Unsurprisingly, UK's percentage of trade union membership significantly decreased, despite being one of the strongest in Europe in the decades that came before that. On the other side of the Atlantic, Reagan chose a more...
I guess there's the dark side then, huh? I guess there's the dark side of Margaret Thatcher, huh?
Spectacular approach to change his country's sentiments towards unions. On August 3rd, 1981, Reagan stepped onto a podium in the White House Rose Garden with a grey suit and perfectly combed hair to make an important statement.
I must tell those who failed to report for duty this morning, they are in violation of the law, and if they do not report for work within 48 hours, they have forfeited their jobs and will be terminated.
Ain't that a bunch of bullshit? Ain't that a bunch of bullshit? And then you have people talk about Reaganomics was the best time of our American culture. Shut the fuck up, bro. Reagan was a dry piece of plum. You understand me? A dried fucking piece of plum. All right, bitter as shit, fucking angry old man. Nobody wants this guy.
I want to pause on this particular event known as the 1981 PATCO Strike because it is a defining moment in labor history. It confirmed the fact that we had entered a new era, the era of management.
Yay!
So the PATCO strike didn't go as planned. Air traffic controllers asked for a significant raise and went on strike to force negotiations. They thought they had the upper hand because an airport couldn't properly run without air traffic controllers to ensure planes land safely.
And by the way, if I'm not mistaken, that's one of the highest stress jobs in America. Like the amount of people who are air traffic control. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, the suicide rate is scarily high for people who work this job. Like and then like I had a homie or acquaintance, I guess you can say, who was gonna go on and did this shit for a little while. I don't think he does that shit no more. I don't think he does this shit anymore. But he told me like there's like this whole thing where like they do like psych evals and all this other bullshit, and like the hours are great. But I mean, the only reason that the hours are great is because you're dealing with a bunch of bullshit. It's almost like being a nurse. Yeah, you got to work, you only work 3 12-hour shifts. So you're only really working 3 hours, 3 days a week. But dude, those are 12-hour fucking shifts. You know what I'm saying? That's half a day where you're fucking going, and you got patients' lives in your hands. You understand? So like, it might be great time. It might be, good schedule, but it's like the amount of bullshit you have to deal with. Is it really worth it?
But Reagan's administration also had a plan. After his announcement, the president and his team looked for replacement workers to counter the strike. Luckily for them, the sky was blue on the following day, the visibility was great, and pilots didn't need controllers' help much. The traffic was up to 75% of normal, and the strikers were fired the following day. The PATCO strike became an example to learn from. The Wharton School of Business even came out with their own manual to encourage business leaders to use the failed strike as a source of inspiration.
That's so fucking crooked. And of course it would be. Of course it'd be one of these fucking Ivy League schools with their fucking, go fuck yourselves. These goddamn reports. You guys are so full of shit. Because here, man, like, you need to understand, like, what's it take for someone to become an air traffic controller besides having to learn all the fucking bullshit? I mean, come on, dude. Like it's, I'm not trying to belittle the amount you have to learn. I'm addressing it ironically. It's like, you think it's fucking cake. It's not fucking arithmetic. You understand? This is more like algebra 2. and you think you're just gonna listen, bro. Enough people keep fucking saying we ain't gonna work. Listen, bro, don't get it fucking twisted, bro. Don't get it fucking twisted. Enough people get off of the fucking job and say, fuck this, I'm not doing it. And you try to fire all those people, guess what, bro? At a certain point, you're gonna run out of people to hire. And if you don't run out of people to hire, you're gonna get a inferior product coming out of it. Let me tell you right now, teachers, because they're a part of the union, they can't strike, which I think is complete, utter bullshit, seeing as all the union really does is keep shitty teachers in practice, right? Moving them to better schools so they can go shit on the education of the smarter kids instead of ruining the ones that are already goddamn doomed to begin with. You know what I'm saying? And that's pretty much what the fucking teachers union does. And I think it's bullshit that teachers can't go on strike. Listen, bro, if teachers went on strike, dog, there's a teaching shortage, bro. Like, you don't have enough people in the fucking system, bro. You don't have enough people who want to be fucking teachers for half of a fucking school district to fucking be marching out on the street, and then you fire them all. Yeah, the fuck right. Yeah, the fuck right. Even, I'm telling you right now, even if it's in your goddamn contract, if half of the teachers had the balls in Miami-Dade County to go on strike, you would not get fired. All of you would stand out there strong. And because you want to know why? Because not that many people want to be fucking teachers to begin with. And not just that. How many fucking new teachers do you think you're going to be able to get into the fucking building? How many fucking issues are you going to have with these teachers fucking acting out of pocket because they don't know how to fucking teach to begin with? You know what I'm saying? And so you think that, oh, you could just replace, everybody's replaceable. Bro, I'm going to put it to you like this. Anybody is replaceable. Everybody is not replaceable. I'm going to say it one more time. Anybody is replaceable. Everybody is not replaceable.
Ronald Reagan was seen as a hero who had resisted evil, lazy strikers and helped things go back to normal for regular Americans.
And that's the bullshit, right? Because everybody else saw it as, oh, yay, now we get to go back to normal. Or, yay, now the price of this thing isn't as expensive as it was before. But in reality, you know, these people aren't recognizing, and this is part of just government manipulation. These individuals aren't realizing that they're forcing other individuals to go ahead and fucking live shit lives because of it. It's such a selfish thing for everyone to be like, yeah, everything's back to normal, we're so happy. It's just like, bro, but what about those people who got fucked over?
As Kenny Mallern, the host of NPR's Planet Money podcast, explained in an episode, Reagan was able to convince a good chunk of the American public that strike breaking, not striking, was something patriotic.
They're not going out on the streets and causing a lot of trouble.
Because we're working too hard to go out on the streets. That's right.
No croissants for us.
It resonated with the experience of people living in an increasingly individualistic society, meaning a society where individual freedoms are prioritized over everything else. In that society, strikers are said to infringe on regular workers' freedom to move. I wish I could say that France escaped the neoliberal wave, but I'd be lying to you. It is true that when Thatcher and Reagan came to power, French voters elected left-wing candidate François Mitterrand, who kicked off his mandate with a Keynesian agenda. But it didn't work the way he wanted, and so he ended up aligning himself with the US and the UK. So yeah, time for Europe to also put the brakes on. The 2008 subprime mortgage crisis accelerated this process. It hit the most vulnerable countries like Greece and allowed Europe to impose austerity measures meant to further dismantle their welfare system. So, after decades of neoliberal policies, the way we work and protest has completely changed. Trade union density has seriously decreased all over the world. In 2017, the number of workers who went on strike in the UK fell to its lowest level since the late 19th century.
But the government would say, hey, that's because we're doing such a good job at keeping people at work. It's because our laws are so great that you know, people want to show up to work. People don't want to go on strike. Look how low the strike numbers are.
France has roughly the same percentage of union membership as the US, around 10%. I know, it always surprises people when I say that, given the image we have of French citizens, French workers. But as we mentioned earlier, and contrary to Americans, French citizens are allowed to join secondary strikes, which in turn favors sectoral bargaining. It means that the government can apply victories achieved in one company or one sector of an industry to an entire sector or an entire industry.
Imagine that. Imagine that you can go on strike because, you know what? These guys are upset because their working conditions aren't fair. You know what? We're upset because our working conditions aren't fair either. You know what? We feel for you. Let's go on the street with you and let's go ahead and show them that fuck them. And then afterwards, they're like, well, you know what? We went on strike for this. You guys are coming with us? And you're like, yeah, we'll go support you guys because it's not fair. We got this shit. Y'all didn't get it, so we're going to go help you guys out. Bro. I don't think there's anything more empowering than you being on a goddamn picket line or you being a part of a fucking protest and you being surrounded by people who are all fucking working towards the same goal. You know how great that must feel to stand by your fellow fucking American and say like, yo, man, let's fucking do this, bro. Let's do this because this shit isn't right. But they took that away from us. They took it away from us. And I'll tell you right now, you want to know how you'll get it back? You want to know how you'll get it back? Guess what? You got to stand together. You got to stand together. Oh, let's see if that happens in America.
And to all workers, even those who aren't members of a union, this solidarity among employees is the reason why French Amazon workers got their employers to close French warehouses for 5 days at the beginning of the pandemic to make sure safety measures were in place. In the meantime, in the US, ALU leader-to-be Chris Moore was fired for staging a walkout to protest those same unsafe working conditions. In France and in other European countries, union leaders are political actors who have access to government officials, and the government is supposed to listen to them. That is why they are more likely to organize big protests close to powerful institutions that any individual can join. In other words, unions are meant to embody a form of counterpower from the local to the national level. Now, I say they are supposed, they are meant, because it is clearly not happening in France at the moment, and that's why people keep protesting. For the past decades, up to this very day, we have witnessed the rapid dismantlement of workers' past victories, and can't even voice our anger through unions because the government refuses to listen to them. We get told that we're lazy, that we need to tighten the belt, while French billionaire Bernard Arnault became the richest man on earth. Man. You see, this is the problem. This is the problem with the wealth gap. This is the problem with letting too many, not even letting too many people, but just letting the right amount of people get too rich. This is the problem. This is why honestly I agree with Eat the Rich. 100%. This is why I think those who have more money should get taxed more. Because at the end of the day, bro, you got it, and everybody else don't. And you're expecting all of us to pay for each other's fucking bills. And at the end of the day, bro, we barely got enough money for ourselves. You know what I'm saying? How about you greedy fucks who are fucking hoarding this shit like Scrooge McDuck? You know what I'm saying? Why don't y'all cough out a little more? And I get it, bro. If you make over a certain amount of money, you get taxed, what? Like 32%? And then if you make like some crazy amount, I don't know, I think it goes up to like 40. I know I've heard people talk about, you know, getting taxed literally half of their fucking, you know, money. But dude, man, when you're making millions, I mean, fuck, half of millions is still millions, you know? So, come on. What? Elon reached the title? Well, it doesn't matter, because we have the richest women on Earth. Look at us, bridging the gender pay gap, one female billionaire at a time. So our initial question was,
ridiculous.
Could something like the protest in France happen in the US? And for me, the answer to that question is that it won't happen overnight, but it is possible. In fact, unions are regaining momentum in the US. Sarah Nelson, president of the Association of Flight Attendants, said that the US are entering a new era in its labor history, one in which workers are primed to transition into a more confrontational relationship with management. You should take to heart that many of the French citizens I spoke to are inspired by America, that's right. Protests organized by BLM and Me Too movements, progressive leaders like Bernie Sanders and AOC have...
Man, ain't that a fucking shame, right? Ain't that a fucking shame? You know, the last great hope, you know, Bernie, you know, and what did we allow to happen? What did we allow to happen? We allowed them to fucking trick us into believing that this man wasn't fit for running. And then we allowed the fucking entire national convention, right? The Democratic National Convention, we allowed them to go ahead and say, nah, you know what? We're not even gonna question this. Joe Biden is who we're going with. Joe Biden. And look at where Joe Biden is now, looking like a fucking dried husk of a corpse. You understand? barely fucking doing anything for the people and doing everything to save his fucking child. By the way, look at this man's jacket. Eat the rich. Fuck yes. Eat the fucking rich. Fuck them. Fuck them. Fuck them, bro. Too long do they live on their fucking piles of cash and then just fucking dishing it out to fuck. Oh, I'm a philanthropist. I'm giving money to help people. Bitch, you ain't doing shit, bro. You're giving a man a fish. That's all you're doing. You're giving a man a fish. And that's it. And then you think your job is done? You think your job is done? The fact that you make your millions, by the way, because think about it this way. If you don't agree with me so far, well, at least think about this. You literally make your fortune in America. You become an American millionaire or an American billionaire off of the backs of common folk, of 9-to-5 fucking workers seeing a product and saying, all right, I'll buy this one. Or seeing a service and say, all right, I'll hire them. That's it. But the only reason you have all that money in the first place is because you have all of us down here at the bottom fucking paying into a system or buying your product or buying your service. So, man, understand that when I'm talking about, bro, eat the fucking rich, tax them a little bit higher because guess what? They're still going to live their fucking lives. And, oh, boo-hoo if you can't buy another yacht this year. But goddamn, bro, there's a lot of people who don't have food tonight. There's a lot of fucking people who don't have food tonight. In fact, there's a lot of people who don't even have houses tonight. How many of our fucking American citizens are now living in fucking apartments because they can't even get the credit or save up the money because also you're trying to get rid of rent control. So they can't even try to fucking save the money up to be able to afford a house one day. No, what you want is for everybody to be living in apartments, and when they die, you clean that bitch out and you put somebody else in there, and you never give property back to the man again, back to the common folk. In fact, you just let these big corporations own all the fucking property. And at the end of the day, fuck the little guy, fuck him right in the ass.
I struck a chord with the youth in France. They have politicized young people across the globe and encouraged them to go in the streets and demand what is right.
Yeah.
It is clear that our countries have a deep relationship of inspiring each other, going back to the days of revolution. And if you're watching the images of protest here in Europe, even though your laws may be more restrictive, there is no reason that you can't join this movement seeking to restore union power. So organize your workplace, spread the message on social media. Let's keep inspiring each other. It's only the beginning.
Thank you for joining us in The Classroom, a series by More Perfect Union. We're taking on right-wing propaganda and telling the stories that corporate-backed media ignores, while seeking out solutions for a better future for all Americans. So join us, like and subscribe.
Look, 100% Americans need to go find their fucking backbones. All right? And not just go find their fucking backbones to go and protest, but then also find their fucking their spirit of camaraderie once again, so that we can stand side by side together and argue against these things, man, and fight against these unfairnesses, bro. This is ridiculous. It's ridiculous that we've allowed ourselves to be just so manipulated by what we see on TV that we can't even like fucking side with our neighbor anymore. We can't even fucking open discourse. We can't even, you know what I'm saying? We can't even band together for a similar fucking goal, even though you're getting fucked in the ass and we're getting fucked in the ass. Everyone's getting fucked in the ass now, bro. And it's just like, how long does it need to continue like this until finally people are like, oh shit, hold on, we've been brainwashed for the last 50 years? Oh shit. We've been letting them screw us over? Oh, that's crazy. Maybe we should do something about it. How long is that gonna take, man? Like I said, bro, I was living in Hollywood, maybe about like Los Angeles. I was living out there maybe fucking, I don't know, 7-8 years ago. And while I was out there, they had the writer's strike. And then here we are, not too long after, with another fucking writer's strike. Or when the Game of Thrones thing was going on, had a fucking writer's strike. Bro, when Lost was on TV, the show Lost, right? One of the best shows of all time. You want to know why that fucking show got so fucking weird and stupid? Is because the writers were about to go on strike and they said, all right, you want to fucking put us on strike? We'll write so many fucking plot twists that you won't be able to hire the writers. You won't be able to hire the writers to figure this shit out. And you know what happened? Eventually the fucking corporations gave in. Eventually they fucking gave in. They gave way. They started paying these motherfuckers more. So they came back and they finished writing up the fucking story. But bro, that's just been going on since I've been in high school. Happened again shortly after I finished college. Happened again just a few years ago. It's happening again today. Come on, dude. Like how many times, like I said, how many times do these people have to forego going to work and forego a couple meals a day just to be able to go on the street and be able to fucking fight for what's right? It's ridiculous. At what point do we say enough is enough? At what point do we band together and actually fucking inspire change? When the fuck is it coming? Because I don't see it anywhere soon.